Texas has many blessings. One of them, of many, is our Lieutenant Governor, and you're about to hear from him shortly. And for the second time today, he and I are going to sit down and have a conversation, and I think he likes that because of my hair. Another blessing that Texas has is that it has a wonderful Senate with 31 wonderful members, and I can say that truly one of our favorites at TPPF, because he's a guy who's a straight shooter, which is what you would expect from a West Texan, is Senator Charles Perry. Senator Charles Perry momentarily will come up and introduce the Lieutenant Governor, but what I want to highlight about Senator Perry is that he has served in the Senate since 2014. You may know, but if you don't, it's important for you to emphasize this. He represents the largest Senate district in the state. Think about the size of Texas. That means his Senate district is composed of 51 counties, 48,000 square miles, and is larger than 19 U.S. states. So you might say that he's a busy guy. In terms of issues that Senator Perry spends some time on, he is known, and with great reason, as a great champion of the pro-life cause, Second Amendment, protecting our ballot box from voter fraud, stopping the sale of illegal synthetic substances to our youth, and of course, protecting rural communities. Senator Perry is a great champion and a great friend, and it is my pleasure to introduce him. Thank you.
Everybody hear me? Is it on yet? There you go. Thank you, Kevin, for that introduction, and thank TPPF for having events like this to discuss the upcoming session and those policies that are important to Texans, whether they know they or not. They are always important. They just sometimes we have to educate them on why they're important. So we're here to do 140 days of work. I think it's going to be the best session I've ever been a part of. When I leave session, it'll be 10 years. And the sense I get from both sides of the aisle and everybody on both sides of the chambers is this is a session of fix and resolution. So I'm excited about that. It wouldn't happen without a great leader and someone that is the face of the Senate and a visionary on all of the conservative principles and values that we hold dear, but most importantly, the Christian values that I share and I think the majority of people in this state still share. Dan Patrick is a personal friend of mine. He's a confidant. He's a mentor. I trust him. I know where his roots are grounded and his foundation starts. And when you start in a foundation of biblical context and you apply those principles throughout, you're never on the wrong page. And with that, it's my personal privilege to be able to invite you, my friend, my colleague, my leader, Senator / Lieutenant Governor / all kinds of other titles, Dan Patrick.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have I seen you today earlier? Thank you. Let me just say something about Senator Senator Perry. I've been talking to every senator today. Senator Flores, Senator Colcourse, you name them, they've all been coming in the door. Charles is a tremendous asset to the Senate for something he talked about, and that was faith issues. And we have so many solid Christians in the Senate, and it's really important. It gives you that foundation, and he represents West Texas well. In fact, he was so impressive to me as I got to know him when I ran 5 years ago that it's unheard of to have a freshman appointed as a chairman. And so I made him a chairman on his first day in 2015 of Rural Affairs, Agriculture, and Water, which is so important. And he's just done a terrific job and a terrific member and a key ally of mine. So it's good to have him here. Thank you for the introduction, Jeff.
Lieutenant Governor Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Yes. We thought we'd do a different format instead of a keynote today.
Sure, that's fine. So some of us were in Austin yesterday.
Yes.
But you weren't.
Yes, I know.
And for those of us who spend more time than we like in the bubble of Austin, there was some chatter that you were in D.C. for a job interview. You've dispelled that rumor today, but I want to give you the opportunity in front of a room of friends to take a shot at it again.
So, I'm not going anywhere. I love the Texas Senate. I love being lieutenant governor. I do believe it is the best job in political office in any state legislature. The only job better than being lieutenant governor would be president of the United States. I mean, I really...
Is that a new rumor?
No, that's not a new rumor. And so what happened was, over the weekend, I got a phone call. Would I come to the White House on Tuesday to talk about border security and potentially discuss ideas for a speech that the president might give to the nation. And I'd actually, in an earlier phone call last week on Thursday, recommended that. I'm not the reason he did it. Obviously, there were many people recommending it, but I thought it was really important that he speak to the nation and lay out the facts on what is a real crisis on the border. We can talk about that a little bit more. And so on Sunday, I get a call in the fourth quarter of the whatever the second game was, the Eagle game, and they said, "Can you be there Tuesday?" And I said, "It's, you know, as I told you yesterday, it's swearing-in day, and it's a big day, and I really shouldn't miss it." And they said, "Well, we understand. We'd like to have you here. We think it's very important." And I thought about it, and I think the outcome of what happens in this border wall versus shutdown will go a long way in determining, the future of the White House, the future of our state, the future of our country. And I just made the determination, the judgment call, that I would go. And the next morning, I get a call from the White House that says, "And by the way, he's speaking tomorrow night to the country." And so it was short notice, and we went. And the fog, as you know, was terrible here yesterday if you were here. So we had to drive up to Killeen to fly. And we got in there late in the afternoon and spent most of our time with Jared Kushner and other members of his staff. And I'll see him tomorrow. He's coming to McAllen, as you may know, so we're going to see him down in McAllen. But it was an interesting time. It was a very historic moment, his first address to the nation. And you can imagine all the people moving around because Jared's office is next to the Oval Office and doing speech draft after speech draft. And so it was, it was a very interesting visit. But in no way was I offered a position. And I told the president on day one when he was elected, many people who work on a campaign want to go into the administration, and they need lots of people to go in when they go. And I told him from day one 2 years ago, I said, "I have no interest in coming to Washington whatsoever. I love what I do, but I'll help you in any way I can." And that's our relationship. So I'm not going anywhere at any time. I just wouldn't move to Washington, so I'm here. Thank you. And by the way, it was the same thing. There were these rumors that I was going to run against John Cornyn in the primary, and it was just nonsense. And so that's why both Ted and I came out about a month ago and said we endorse John Cornyn for the U.S. Senate. So rumors, in fact, the rumor mill went so far that they said the reason I had Jane Nelson gavel in yesterday was because she was my hand-picked replacement. I mean, that's how far it went. So, and she would be a great lieutenant governor, by the way.
You see what I mean about the Austin bubble, but
Yeah,
you know that better. Well, I will just tell you on behalf of TPPF, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. And the other person I met with yesterday that you all should be so proud of was Brooke. She is unbelievable. And we talked about it yesterday, to think where she has come from. As Rick Perry told me yesterday, they met at an FFA meeting when she was 15, and now the two of them from Payne Creek, and I forget where was her small town? Where was she from?
Glen Rose.
Yeah. Glen Rose and Payne Creek, and once a week they have lunch together, one time permits, in the Navy mess, which is right there in the White House. And it's a wonderful thing for Texas. And she was very influential in asking, for me being there, actually. She had recommended to the president, and we have the president and I have a good relationship now. We've talked about border security. In October, he called and wanted some thoughts on it. And so we have a good relationship, but Brooke is such a key, and I don't know what her title is, but let me just say she has already risen to the level of, I think, one of his most trusted allies in a very small circle of people. I hope we get her back. I don't want her back for 6 more years, quite frankly. I want him to win. But I hope we get her back to Texas because she is carving out such a niche for herself. And as we all know, she's impressive at everything she does at every level, that there are going to be a lot of people who want to steal her away. So I hope she comes back. But she's done a great
we're looking
job
forward
for
to
us.
having her back
Yes.
at TPPF and in Texas. I might have spoken with Brooke yesterday, and we might have been talking about Longhorns and Aggies.
I think you might have been.
And
Hey, it was a good game for both of them.
yeah, Brooke, if you're watching, I won't put you on the spot and do that. And she mentioned, of course, this is just her and me. She said, I just saw the lieutenant governor. And I said, I just saw this news report. What's going on?
Yes.
But now we know what you're up to. And I want to, all kidding and ribbing aside, focus on the proximate issue,
Yes.
which is border security. And I know a lot of us, whether we're casual observers or spend a lot of time in policy, we care deeply about what seems to be a crisis. And the question I wanted to pose for you, because it's just speaking to many of you in the audience today, I know this is very much on your minds, is if you had the opportunity to come up with a 3 or 4 point solution to this, what would it be? Because I think that Texans more than anyone have a real good understanding of what's at stake.
Sounds like the first question that Jared asked me.
I did not talk to him.
And I had not met him before. Gosh, he's impressive. And Ivanka, who I've met before, we did a trip together to NASA, and she came by the office yesterday. That's an impressive couple. Man, they are impressive. So here's the truth. The idea that the Democrats saying that this is a manufactured crisis really can only explain that they're deniers or deceivers, that they deny the facts and the truth, or they know the truth and they're deceiving the American public. I'm going to be on Laura Ingraham tonight, and that's probably my opening line. And it really upsets me because this is a real issue that impacts Americans and impacts those coming to America who want to come to America. And that was one of the things we talked about as they were in the multiple drafts of the speech yesterday, Brooke and Jared, and we were talking about, we have to also talk about the humanitarian side. And I'm going to lead with that. We picked up 40 dead bodies in Brooks County last year. That's over 700 in the last 10 years of people who have died by being dropped off in the desert with no water. They're senior citizens, they're young children, they're women, and they die. People are stuffed in the back of an 18-wheeler who die coming to America. 1 out of 3, we believe, young girls or women are sexually assaulted as in the journey. They are now, law enforcement knows that many people on the other side of the border give their daughters or granddaughters or sisters or wives pregnancy pills so that they don't become pregnant on the trip. We are a Christian nation. We should not be a place where people have to die to come to our country. And the fault of that lies at the federal government, both parties. Both parties had a chance to do something at the right time. I've always said I think this president may be the one who resolves this issue. But because we have no real way to bring people here in a reasonable period of time, vet them, let them pay a few $1,000s, which is far less than they pay to the drug cartels. The drug cartels are making tremendous money on these people, as well as drugs and everything else they send over. So if nothing else was a problem, people shouldn't have to die to our country because of our policy. Secondly, we need a wall, whether it's a steel barrier, whatever you want to call it. We need this wall from Brownsville to, if you know where Falcon Lake is, that's pretty much the stretch of land where we have big cities, mid-sized cities, some small cities, because that's where most people are coming. 500,000 people were apprehended crossing the border illegally last year from San Diego to Brownsville. 500,000 people, over 300,000 in Texas. We think we get 1 out of every 4 or every 5. I told Jared yesterday that's 1.5 million, 1.5 million, 2 million, whatever. If it's 1 out of 8, it's far more. So a couple of million got through, in addition to the 500,000 we caught. We don't have 11 million people in this country anymore here illegally. It's 25 to 35 million. It's 7 or 8% of our population who are not a part of our culture. Our schools now, 1 out of 5 students in Texas is either does not speak English or is not proficient in English. That's that's 1 million kids, 1 out of 5. And so you need that wall because they mostly come in those areas because you come to the big cities area, you disappear into the crowd very quickly. They come around the bridges, however. So you need the real barrier to stop them coming in, Kevin. And you layer that over, so there's the humanitarian side, there's the criminal side. We've had over 200,000 criminal aliens, most of them here illegally, arrested in the last 7 to 8 years and charged them with over 500,000 crimes. Those are real crimes. You read the headline crimes and the terrible things that happen. We've had 14 police officers in the country killed, people here illegally, including last month. This is real. And then you look at the economic impact. We cannot afford to educate, medicate, and incarcerate the whole world. You often hear the left say, well, these are good people. The majority of them are good people trying to better their lives. But there's over 6 billion people on the planet, a lot of good people. You cannot afford, the taxpayers cannot afford to educate and medicate the entire world who wants to come here. We have to have some order there. And so it's an economic impact, there's a crime impact, there's the humanitarian impact, and to suggest this isn't a crisis. I'll give you one last factoid. Our state troopers who do a great job seized 94.5 pounds of fentanyl. And those 94.5 pounds, that was last year, is equivalent to 21 million doses. We know we have an opioid crisis in our country, and that's coming across the border too. So the idea that there's really not a problem, it's a manufactured crisis, again, they're either deniers or deceivers.
Thanks for that response. It makes me think. It makes me think that there are so many people in policy and politics who want to de-emphasize the nation state. And what makes America special, among many things, is this custom that the rule of law is above all else.
Right.
And that is one of the reasons I would submit that we have an immigration problem, is that we've been ignoring the rule of law. And so, thank you. Thank you for advocating for that. I think it's not only an important reminder, but it's probably the first place we need to start. And I think as Texans, because we get along with all of the different cultures who are here, we really are a microcosm of this pluralistic society known as America, that we really ought to be taking the lead. And we're just very grateful that you are. So there's this other thing that's going on.
Yes.
Called the legislative session.
Yes.
And I know you're aware of it. I know you've been very busy today.
Very busy.
And your day maybe didn't start with this, but at least publicly it did. And that was the very wonderful press conference with Governor Abbott and Speaker Bonin, who will be here tomorrow morning. And I think either you or Governor Abbott mentioned that this might have been the first time in modern history that there is such a press conference, and thank you for that. And the reason I say thank you is because even if y'all were members of a different political party, we happen to think at TPPF that it's very important as part of a healthy civil society to have that kind of discourse. And civil discourse doesn't mean we agree on everything. It means we have the ability to disagree. It might be nice that some of our universities remember that. But I won't even go there.
Right.
The question that
we may go there this session with some bills, but
there's no doubt TPPF will.
Yes.
But the question I have for you is, before we get into some of the specific policies, is how frequent do you think you will be doing that kind of collaboration with Governor Abbott and Speaker Bonin?
Yeah, I was very appreciative of Speaker Bonin, who so far we are off to a great start, really a great start. I've wanted to do this since I was Lieutenant Governor, and quite frankly, the former Speaker didn't want to do that. And the three of us to come forward and have an overview of the session, standing side by side, sending a message to the legislature and to the people of Texas of where we're going, and the fact that we're working together. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on every issue, but what we talked about today was, number one, we have to reform property taxes because they are pushing people out of their homes and out of their businesses, and that is the number one issue that we're going to be focused on. I've been focused on it since the 90s. It's been a very hard issue to tackle. Number two, teacher pay. In my view, the most important person responsible for students' education next to the parent is the teacher. And we can throw billions of dollars at education and in all kind of systems and all kind of programs and ideas. But if you don't have a really good teacher executing that plan, all the programs and all the ideas are worthless. And so teacher pay and then school finance. And these are going to be difficult issues. These are big dollar issues. But we have to address them. And the fact that Dennis and the governor and myself, and we said, look, we don't have the details of a plan yet. And I know TPPF helps us with a lot of ideas.
We might have a couple of details we could suggest.
But I don't know what the final bill is going to look like, but I just know that that's what the people want us to address. Border's important, transportation is important. There are a lot of healthcare, a lot of other issues. But if you said the top three, it's really important. So the fact that we, I've always said this, and this even applied when Joe was here. If the three of us agreed on something, it probably would pass. And if the three of us didn't want something to pass, it wasn't going to pass. So when the three of us are talking about those three same issues and the other key issues, including border security, that's a real good day for Texas and a good day for the Republican Party. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for the response. And I think that's real leadership on each of your parts. And I think that there's a real hunger in the Texas public square for that to happen.
And you asked me, is it going to continue? Dennis and I are going to have dinner. When I was education chair, it was probably the best session for education reform we've had. We reduced STAR tests from 15 to 5, put more focus on career. We passed the first charter bill since the 90s. And because Jimmy Don Aycock, who was the new chair and I was the new chair, we went out to dinner in January and we said, Jimmy, what do you want to do? We were kind of thinking alike. And I said, Jimmy, you take this, I'll take this, we'll work on this together. And we had the best session ever because we worked together from day one. And that's what it takes. So we're going to be working together. And again, there are going to be differences, but the differences will be decided in a professional manner between us in a way that business people and professionals should operate.
So if we have the best session ever, and we certainly would be enamored with that.
Yes.
Most importantly, as taxpayers, what does that look like regarding property tax relief? In other words, what's the threshold for success on that pressing issue?
No matter what we do, and I realize this, no matter what we do in the area of property tax relief or school finance reform will be enough in the eyes of some. And I hope that at the end of the day, the voters, the educators, the homeowners, the business property owners understand that we're going to do everything we can, and it's step one, and it's something we have to continue to work. So what will it look like? Again, in property tax, our bill last time was to reduce the rollback rate from 8 to 4%, so that your property taxes could not go up in a year more than 4% unless the people had a vote. Now, I want you to think about something, and some of you may not know this, and I don't want to be too complicated. The school districts have been operating under that premise somewhat for a number of years, but our cities and counties have not. The problem with the property tax system is even if you lower the rate, your values are going up so high that you have this increase. And this has been a problem since the late 90s. Now, some of your local county judges and mayors, and I respect the hard job that they have, they will say, you can't cap, my budgets. We're not capping their budgets. We're saying that you cannot raise your budget, which has a effective tax rate increase, on your constituents more than 4% unless they vote. Well, that was the bill we actually passed, and the former speaker didn't agree with that approach, and we had a weaker bill sent back through no fault of the person who carried the bill. Well, the governor has a plan at 2.5%. And the 2.5% bill is very attractive to me. Number one, it's below the 4, but it does something else. It will depress the compression rate, will save taxpayers money, but it will help balance out what we contribute to schools and what the local taxpayer contributes to schools. And I'll close with, I don't want to take the whole, I could do 2 hours on this. But right now you hear the education community say, the legislature is not funding education properly. And it's going down, the percentage is less and less. Well, you know why? Because our sales tax growth, which is our sales tax is what we spend, is going up about 4% a year. That's about what it grows. Property tax values are going up 8 and 9% a year. So of course they're putting in more money. We can't match that. The only way we can match that is if we change the system to bring some more balance into the system. And that will put more responsibility on our shoulders, but that's how you lower the tax rate, and that's how you bring some more equilibrium into that. If we don't do that soon, pretty soon there's going to be such a gap. 5 billion, 6, 7 billion, we'll never get there. So this is the session now to do this. So I think that's what it will look like. It was interesting. Again, I've been meeting almost with every senator today. And I had a caucus meeting with the Democrats, a caucus meeting with the Republicans, and the Democrat senators recognize this too. Property tax is their number one issue. So I'm real optimistic, and we'll see what the final bill looks like, but it's something that has to be done.
Sure, and education obviously is part of that, and obviously is the most important thing in a civil society. Yeah. And I want to emphasize, if you're interested, one statistic in Texas public education. I say this as an educator. I learned this morning that you were an educator before you changed careers.
I don't want to go too far. I just did my student teaching.
And then you gave up.
And then I gave up.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did get my teaching certificate. And what I said to Kevin earlier today, I think it's the most noble profession. Obviously, our law enforcement, our firefighters, our first responders, that's a life and death issue. So that's the most important. Unfortunately, today, teachers also have to sometimes be called in that role. But next to those on the front lines, the teacher is the most important person in our life, and it takes a special person to be that person. I wasn't that special person. My wife is, she was. My mother-in-law was, my daughter-in-law was, but I wasn't cut out to be a teacher, although when I retire from this line of work, I'd like to teach, and I'd like to go into ministry. I mean, that's the kind of combine those two things. Teach history and do some ministry work.
No, that's fantastic. You'd have some very fortunate students. The question I have for you is, because we like teachers so much, and because we like students especially, why don't we spend more money on classrooms and instruction?
Right. Well, this is not anything new for me. I've been focused, again, I was on education. This is kind of good news, bad news. I probably know as much or more about education, funding formulas, funding, and the process and the curriculum than anyone in the legislature, because I've been doing it every year since 2007. I spent 8 years on education, 2 sessions as vice chair, 1 session as chairman, and that's my number one issue. It's my passion. I really enjoy it. But with that said, if I'm the most knowledgeable, I'm still down here compared to everybody up here because it's such a daunting topic. But one of the things that I tried to get done last special session, after the session, is I looked at the math, and I discovered that teachers are only getting 32 cents on the dollar of all the money we spend on education. And those are TEA facts. It's not my cowboy math, which I'm famous for. Those are TEA facts. So we spend 60 billion on education. About 18 billion of that goes to salaries. You got another 3 or 4 billion in benefits. So 22 billion out of 60. Now, the schools will say, well, the classrooms are getting more money. Well, computers and different things, yeah. So you can gross that up, and all those things are important. But the most important person is a teacher. And I'm old enough to remember that you could really get a great education before computers, before fancy classrooms, before, architecturally designed and engineered massive, impressive art museum-looking schools and $80 million stadiums. And all of you in this crowd, and I'm probably older than most of you, but those of us over 50, we did just fine because we had a great teacher. So and when I was education chair, I told Kevin this story this morning. This was kind of like a revelation to me that I didn't think about. I asked someone testifying, I said, why aren't we attracting the quality people to teaching like we once did? And the person said, Mr. Chairman, back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and 80s, women in college had 2 choices for career: be a nurse or be a teacher, because the corporate world was closed off to them. You know, law firms weren't hiring women. Corporations weren't hiring women. And so the very best and brightest went into teaching. Now, it's a good thing and a great thing that women now have the whole world open to them, as it should have always been. But the fact is, if you're a really sharp young lady coming out of college, do you want a $50,000 a year job where you get a $1,000 raise a year for the next 25 years? Or do you want to go in the corporate world where you might not even start at $50,000 and you might not as get, much time off? Some teachers get some time off, although most of them work during the summer. But you have a real opportunity to grow. And so we're competing with that. So that's why we will introduce a bill that I talked about on the campaign trail to raise the base of teacher salaries up for the first time in maybe 20 years or so. And people say, well, and I know TPPF has, let's incentivize. I'm totally for that. But it's not up to the state to create an incentive program for every one of our 9,000 schools and 1,200 school districts. That's up to the school districts. We need to raise the base, and then we need to give them the money that they can use for those incentive programs. And I had a senator say, well, I don't think every teacher should get the same amount. They're all not the same. They're all not good. I said, wait a minute. Two years ago, in the last session, we had a problem at Child Protective Services and foster care because we had a 40% turnover rate in our social service social workers. And so we gave every social worker, caseworker, a $12,000 raise. Every one. We didn't ask which ones deserved it more than others, which ones were the good ones, which ones we said we got to stop the bleeding here of this turnover. And then we gave all of our state troopers an across the board raise. In other words, we've done this before. So I think we need to raise the base up, and then we need to provide more money for incentive above that because we need to attract and keep. Today, if you're a great teacher and you love teaching, but you need more money because the world takes money to live on, your only pathway is to become a principal or a superintendent or some male and female become coaches to make extra money. How about the best math teacher and the history teacher being able to make, or any discipline, be able to make $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year because they're the best at it? And by the way, for many schools who don't have that good teacher, let that teacher teach online to those kids in that school, particularly in the rural areas where they really struggle to get teachers. So that's the game plan. I'm the worst person to interview because I give you too long answers.
I was just about to say, I wish you had more passion.
Yeah. Well, it's so clear to me that all of us in this room, and I know many of you, but all of us in this room, I just know because you're here, we've all been blessed. Somewhere along the line, either our parents or our grandparents or a teacher took us under our wing, and we got a good education, and probably most of you went on to college. And so we're living the American dream. It doesn't mean life is easy, you have to work hard, but we were given an opportunity. There are so many young people in our society today. There's nobody at home helping them, maybe nobody at home with an educational background or a high school diploma. And they go to a school, and God bless them, some of these teachers are trying to help, but maybe it's just not the best situation, and we're not attracting the best. And there are many great teachers out there. Most of them are really good. But we're really struggling to find teachers. And so you can't live the American dream unless you have a great education. And if we don't have a highly educated, highly being trained for career and college, you don't have to have a 4-year degree to be successful, but highly trained and ready to go, then they never have a chance to live the American dream. They live in poverty their entire lives. And that's not who we are. I mean, we took it for granted when we grew up. The dropout rate wasn't as high, although we're doing much better than we used to. But I mean, you just went to school. In my generation, you didn't drop out of school. And I was the first kid in my family to go to college. It's in the, I don't even want to say when it was because it was a long time ago, but you get my point. But it's part of, where would we be if we didn't have that parent or that teacher today? So that's what I'm passionate about.
Sure, as we all should be. So one final policy question before we move toward a little bit broader question on which we'll conclude our conversation, and that is the other big part of the state budget, and that's healthcare. And so please kind of put your student
I'll give you a
teacher
short
hat
answer on that one. I don't know.
That won't suffice as a good answer.
No, I'll give you a real good answer.
Put your student teacher hat on, please, and tell me what's wrong about this premise. that one of the solutions to the healthcare crisis facing Americans, a topic we covered, I would say, very well among our panelists at lunch, is if states, especially really courageous conservative states like Texas, were to take the lead.
Yeah, look, I've been pushing, and I think you all have been pushing, getting our money back in block grants. This president, I think, is actually moving towards giving us our money back in block grants if the states accept it. Now there are some states that say, whoa, wait a minute, because now guess who's responsible for health care? The states. You can't blame it on the federal government. I relish the opportunity to get the money back, but I don't know what the plan would look like, but I just know that we know better how to design a plan for Texas than we do for North Carolina or Idaho or Oregon or wherever. And those states, and Washington, D.C. especially, they don't know how to design one for us. So look, this is a problem that was really taken to a new level under Obamacare. You know, there were people who weren't covered in this country, not nearly as many as Obama said there were. And many of those were young people who just said, I don't want it, I don't want to pay for it. We were all young once and thought we were bulletproof. And, you know, if I break a leg, you know, I'll go to the emergency room. But it's now, the system is totally broken. And it's going to take some real creative people in every state to do this. And the whole 10th Amendment was about giving the states the right to do most things, not a big federal government, to be the laboratory of ideas. And so I don't have the answer to that, but we have some really smart people here, and help from you all and help from others who will help design a system for Texas.
Sure, thank you. Last question, and that is a broader question. If there's an unofficial theme to policy orientation this year, it's keeping Texas, Texas, because as Texas goes, so goes America. From your perch, which I know you approach with great model of servant leadership, how do we keep Texas, Texas?
Well, remember the commercial with my truck and the dog?
I think we might remember that.
Yeah. That dog, by the way, the truck was mine. The dog was not. We were doing the commercial at a friend's ranch in Brenham, and the dog wandered up on the set and sat down next to me. And this dog happens to be a herding dog, you know, those trained dogs, you know, they go out and bring all the sheep in. And the dog's name was Rose. And Rose, I said, will Rose stay? And the owner said, yeah, you know, if I tell Rose to stay, Rose won't move. Well, we did about 10 takes to get that right, and every time when I started speaking, Rose looked up. Now, you see, a dog knows when they are listening to a smart, wise, compassionate person. That's why you never saw a dog in a Beto O'Rourke commercial. So, where were we? So in that commercial...
You're on your own.
Yeah, I'm on my own. In that commercial, I said, I don't know about you, I won't give you the whole 30 seconds. I can give you pretty much by memory. Democrats want an income tax. They want an open border. They want to take your guns. They want more abortions. But in Texas, that's not our values. And I kind of leaned forward in the rocking chair, and Rose looked up, waiting for the close. But I'm not going to let the Democrats turn Texas into California. And the election, look, it was a slugfest. But the people of Texas, Republicans, stood up. And now, actually, and I may share this with the president tomorrow, you know, his first slogan was Make America Great Again. Maybe in the next run here in 2 years, it should be, I'm not going to let the Democrats turn America into California. And because California is just a disaster area, especially with this new governor. And so let me give you a quick insight about this election, which you may not know. Do we have a minute? I don't know how we're.
Of course you do.
Okay.
Well, you've been take it anyway.
Well, no, you've been sitting here a long time, but people have this perception because the margins got closer. Abbott won by less than he did 4 years ago. I won by less than 4 years ago. Ted, was close. That Republicans didn't turn out. Just the opposite. 95 to 97% of our 4Rs, and do you all know what a 4R is? That's a Republican who's voted in 4 straight Republican primaries. A 3R is 3 straight, and the Ds, 4 Ds, 3 Ds. You know, that's kind of how we judge this is a likely Republican voter. That's why you get robocalls in mail. And so in 2014, a total of 4.5 million people voted. 2.7 million for Abbott and me and the other statewide, you know, at the top. You know, not everybody was at 2.7, but close. And the Democrats were 1.8. So we won by about 1 million votes. In 2016, which is normal, in a presidential year, the vote turnout usually doubles. So we turned out 8.9 million people in 2016. So 4.5 million to 8.9. Then you go back to this year. So the forecast was, we'll increase some. Maybe we'll be 5 million, 5.2, 5.5. We had 8.4 million people vote in this midterm. So we went from 4.5 million to 8.4 million. And I actually received 1.5 million more votes this time than I did in 2014. 1.5 million more, but I won by a smaller percentage because the Democrats turned out, they went from 1.8 to 4 million. We went from 2.7 to 4.2 or 4.3. So that's why the numbers looked as they were. But what was that message? This is not a partisan organization. But the issue is that the Democrats, just analyzing this election, the Democrats had a bright, shiny object in a new guy, Beto O'Rourke, who had $80 million, most anyone's ever had for the Senate. And Ted had $30 million. That's a lot, but 80 to 30. That's why, you know, $5 million of yard signs were out there. Governor Abbott and I were brand new in 14. We weren't brand new this time. There was not one single, in my view, galvanizing issues that people were turning out to vote for. So Beto and the Ds had everything kind of working for them. Robert Francis? But our Republican voters, I don't want to say our, the Republican voters turned out to say, on their really own initiative, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, Governor and myself, we spent a lot of money to get the vote out, but they turned out to say, we want to secure the conservative fiscal values, the conservative pro-family values, pro-life values, pro-Second Amendment, and 10th Amendment values. And so it was an amazing race. It's never really happened in history before to see a turnout go up that high. So it was a really interesting, because people all the time, well, Dan, you know, you won by, 18, 19 points last time, you won by 5 or 6 this time, what happened? I said, well, I got 1.5 million more votes. What? How'd that happen? We didn't think the Republicans turned out. So it was a very interesting election. And it portends for 2020, I think, another interesting election.
Sure. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, you've been gracious and generous with your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. You're a great Texan, great American. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless Texas. Thank you all for sitting. As part of this conversation, we look forward to the next couple of days of policy orientation. Last word.
Before you clap, thank you for what you do. This is the greatest conservative organization in the country, which means in the world. You're really the only, there are other conservative groups, on special issues like pro-life or Texas values and that specialize and do a fabulous job. But in terms of a conservative think tank that can give us support and ideas, you're it. And again, the best in the country. And on the other side, the left has multiple organizations. So without your work, we who are conservatives in the legislature would be fighting with one arm tied behind our back. Rush Limbaugh can do that, but we can't do that necessarily. So thank you for your support to TPPF. It is really valuable, it's really important, and it really has made a difference in Texas. Remember, the Republicans have only been in charge of the state since 2003. And if you look at what's happened from when it was all in Democrat hands to now all in Republican hands, and I know this is not a partisan event, I'm just saying there was a sea change. And conservatives have now pretty much filled the legislature, especially in the Senate and in the House. It was all because of you and helping us to grow and be better as we went along. And the payoff was this last election, when out of nowhere, to everyone's surprise, 4.3 million or 4.4 million Republican conservative voters showed up and said, we don't want you to move to the middle. We don't want to be run by someone with the ideas of Beto O'Rourke. We want to stand for our Constitution, our First Amendment, and all of the things that are important to us in Texas. And that was very special, and you all were a big part of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.